Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of How Did We Not Know That? I'm Nat.
I'm Jack.
All right, so before we get into Jack's topic, we wanted to remind everyone about our big event that's coming up. Super exciting news. We're doing our very first live stream through our YouTube channel, which is How Did We Not Know That? You could just find us, subscribe to us on YouTube, like all our videos. How convenient. Also, our live stream is going to be held on February 19th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a Friday, so Friday night, spend your Friday night with us. Jack just recently took the Foreign Service Officer test. Congratulations, Jack. So she's going to be sharing her experience with us and how she studied for the test, and we'll be answering any questions you guys have for us. And yeah, we really hope to see you guys there. Be sure to check it out. And also, if you're a supporter of ours through Patreon, you will be able to access a recording of the live stream. So just another incentive to support us. Give us your money.
Yeah, that's our thanks for supporting us. So if you have things to do on Friday, don't worry about it. We'll send it to you. So
we hope to see you guys there. It'll be really fun. And today, Jack is talking about a very important topic. I honestly don't know that much about it. But yeah, Jack, do you want to let the listeners know what we'll be talking about today?
Yeah, I'm talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or Palestinian-Israeli conflict. This was like a very complex topic, so I'm really sorry if this feels like a brief overview, because it is a brief overview. Yeah, there's just a lot that goes into it, and if it feels like it's not resolved at the end, take a number, because the conflict is not resolved at the end.
It's
so.
not.
Here we go. Nat, do you want to talk about Palestine and Israel? Like, what are they?
What are they?
Careful
yeah,
with your
exactly.
wording.
That's why I'm like actually really nervous for this episode, because like the terminology is everything when it comes to this conflict.
They're two distinct groups of people. How about that?
Yeah, I think that's like it's
like the most PG way to say it.
So like vague.
Okay, so
they're different things.
They're two areas. And they're both in the Middle East, and they have a claim over the same land. And the land is located between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River. So Palestinians are characterized by being predominantly Muslim and Arabic speaking, while Israelis are Jewish, primarily speaking Hebrew. Today, Palestine theoretically includes an area between modern-day Israel and Jordan, as well as the Gaza Strip, which also borders modern-day Israel and Egypt. The big issue is, well, there's a few, but one of the biggest issues is that there isn't an international consensus on where the borders are, and also which area is recognized as a state versus a country, and the control over the region is debated, and it's complex. So, how the conflict began. So basically, throughout all of history, Jews have been persecuted, especially within Europe. And, like, if you've ever read The Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare, have you read it?
No, I cannot say that I have.
If you read that, you'll notice that the idea that Jews are evil is an underlying and popular theme. Just a quick Spark Note summary. One of the main characters, I forget his name, well, he's Jewish, and he gives out a loan to someone who needs it, who's not Jewish. He's probably like Catholic or Christian or something. And if he fails to repay the loan, what the Jew character wants is his flesh, like a piece of his flesh, not money. It's weird. They like portray the Jewish character very monstrously, and then the way they get around. Oh, I'll spoil it, but do you want me to spoil it for you?
Yeah, go for it. I don't think I'll be reading it.
All right. Well, the way they get over it is that they say, oh, yeah, like I signed a contract saying you get a piece of my flesh if I fail to repay the debt, but I didn't promise you any blood. So unless you can get a piece of flesh from me without getting any blood, then it's null and void because you didn't say that you could cause harm to me. And then, yeah.
Like flesh without blood?
Yeah.
Here's my fingernail.
It was weird. It was weird. Just like bunches of fingernail clippings.
That's disgusting. Wow. Okay, so they're like literally demonizing Jewish people.
Yeah, back in Shakespearean times, that was a big theme in literature. And then even if you go back to biblical times, I don't know if you've read the Bible. I'm gonna assume no, but if you've heard it, have you heard of the story of Moses? That's a popular one.
Yeah, the parting the Red Sea.
Yeah, do you know why he was parting the Red Sea?
No, but I only know, like, doesn't he have animals? 2 of every gender of animals.
That would be Noah. It's Noah's Ark.
Oh,
different things.
Okay, then no, different.
No, you're good.
Stories.
Have you watched The Prince of Egypt? You know, everyone watches that and they're like, "Whoa, the main character's so good looking," like the cartoon.
What? Oh, yeah. Okay, I haven't watched it in so long. I'll have to.
Yeah, that's the story of Moses.
Then why does he part the Red Sea?
Okay, can I do this whole summary quickly? Okay, so the Egyptian pharaoh issues killing of all Hebrew children, Hebrew sons or something. So you have to drown them in the river, and then so the mom, Moses' mom, who's Hebrew, Moses is a Hebrew, doesn't want to kill her son. So what she does is she sends him down the Nile in a basket and hopes that he'll survive and someone will find him, some Egyptian will find him and take him in. And then the Egyptian pharaoh's wife finds him and raises him as one of her own. So then Moses becomes the prince of Egypt because the pharaoh adopts him, but he grows up not knowing that he's Hebrew until one day he runs into his birth siblings. So then that's when he finds out that he's actually Hebrew. And then he grows up with this big conflict because the Egyptians torture and enslave the Hebrews, and although he's technically the pharaoh's son now, he's still by blood a Hebrew. When Moses leaves and then comes back, he's like, my life's purpose is to free the Hebrews from Egypt's lands. And then his brother is now the pharaoh, so he tells his brother, this is a long he tells his brother, like, he tells his brother, let my people go. At least that one song, it's like, when Moses came to Egypt's land, let my people go.
I know that one. Okay. Wow.
So, yeah, and then he parts the Red Sea because the Egyptians are chasing him. So Moses parts the Red Sea through the power of God, and then the sea, and then they get to the other side.
Wow. So. That's incredible. Wow. I've never heard that. I never knew this story, but
that's one of my favorite stories because they have the 10 plagues too, which are really interesting. Anyways, to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Right, so my point in sharing that is that anti-Semitism, which is prejudice and discrimination against Jewish people, goes back all the way to the BC era, like even before Christ. And so the idea that Jews are terrible and should be mistreated, unfortunately, does not end by the 20th century. And then just to give some background on the Palestinian side, too, throughout history, Palestine has been an area that is just in that area. They've always been in that area, but they've been ruled by various different groups throughout history, including Persians, Greeks, Romans, Arabs, Crusaders, Egyptians, and Palestine was ruled under the Ottoman Empire from 1500s to 1917, 1920s. Okay. So a large chunk of it is Ottoman Palestine. So going back to the ever-growing anti-Semitism around the world, especially in Europe, we see a rise in Zionism, which is the movement to recreate a Jewish presence in a Jewish homeland. And the name comes from the word Zion, which is a Hebrew reference to Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is that city that's in, well, it's supposed to be like no one owns it, but it's in a city in the Middle East, Jerusalem. It's like important, a lot of religions, it's important for Christians, Jews, and Muslims. Zionism is calling back to the homeland of Jerusalem, that area. And so in 1897, a Jewish journalist named Theodor Herzl establishes modern Zionism as a political organization. He believes that the Jewish population cannot survive unless it has its own nation. He writes a pamphlet that calls for the political recognition of a Jewish homeland in the area, which was then Ottoman Palestine.
Okay.
And he also goes on to form the first Zionist Congress and serve as president of the World Zionist Organization. And then, unfortunately, he passed away in 1904, but he's considered the father of modern Zionism.
Oh, sorry, I have a question. So you said that he's trying to find, like, a location for this state for Jewish people, right? And you said he chose Ottoman Palestine. But are there already people living there? Like, why did...
Yes. So the reason they choose it is because the city of Jerusalem and everything surrounding it, they want that land because that's the land that they feel would be Jewish homeland, because like parting of the Red Sea, right? Like, where did the Hebrews go past the Red Sea? Like, they came to that area, and Jerusalem is where a lot of Jewish people were.
Yeah, okay.
Anyways, we get to the end of World War I, and the Ottoman Empire has officially collapsed, and the British then take control of Palestine. And in 1917, British Foreign Secretary Arthur James Balfour writes a letter to Baron Rothschild, who is a wealthy and prominent leader in the British Jewish community. And the letter basically expresses the British government's support for the establishment of the Jewish home in British-controlled Palestine, as long as it did not undercut the rights of non-Jews there. So that letter is later published, and that becomes known as the Balfour Declaration.
Yeah.
So that's probably like a key point everyone should take away from this. That's what the Balfour Declaration was. This document was then included in another document issued by the League of Nations in 1923 that gave the British the responsibility of establishing a Jewish homeland. So Jewish migration, from the start of the concept of Zionism, there are already Jews who started to migrate back. And after the Balfour Declaration, Jewish migration continues. And in the 1930s, we start to see growing Jewish-Arab tensions, so much so that the British start to try to limit the migration to that area. So yeah, there's some issues with that. And then let's go to World War II. Nat, do you remember what a significant part of World War II was that involved Jewish people?
The Holocaust?
Yeah, so the Holocaust happens. That's a really big part of World War II. And if anyone doesn't know what the Holocaust is, that was a massive genocide of Jews done by Nazi Germany and led by Adolf Hitler. And that resulted in around 6 million Jews being murdered. So the Holocaust naturally led to a lot more Jewish migration.
Yeah.
After the Holocaust ended, Zionist leaders very actively promoted the idea of an independent Jewish nation. Also, more European and the British were a little more sympathetic to the cause, especially after that happened. So the problem is, though, that as more and more Jews flee to the area, there's going to be more and more conflict between the Jewish refugees and the Palestinians.
Yeah.
By 1947, the World War II is officially ended, and the violence between the Jews and the Arabs is in a crisis now, and the British don't know what to do, so they give the problem to the United Nations. And the United Nations proposes splitting the land into a state for Jews, which will be Israel, and a state for Arabs, which is Palestine. And the city of Jerusalem, which is claimed by both Jews and Muslims, they're going to set that as an international territory with a special status.
Yeah, at the time, it's like, sounds like a decent compromise. At this point, and I'm not, but I'm just saying, if I'm the UN, like, how do I solve this conflict?
Yeah. Well, they proposed that, right? And so the Palestinians were not for that. But on November 29th of 1947, the United Nations members all voted to partition Palestine. But the partition actually gave Jews more than half of Palestine, even though they made up less than half of Palestine's population.
Okay.
And once that vote passed, then the British withdrew their mandate on Israel and declared it an independent state on May 14th of 1948. So Jews are very pleased with this plan, but to Arabs, it was just European colonial theft. The land was just getting taken away from Palestinians. So almost immediately, neighboring Arab armies moved in to prevent the establishment of the Israeli state, and this resulted in the 1948 Arab-Israeli war that ensued, and it involved Israel and 5 other Arab nations: Jordan, Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and Lebanon. The Arabs lost, and the Israelis secured full control of their UN-allocated territory, as well as pushing the partition even further back and grabbing even more Arab territory. They also claimed the western half of Jerusalem. The 1948 conflict opened a new chapter in the struggle between Jews and Palestinian Arabs, which now became a regional contest involving nation states and a tangle of diplomatic, political, and economic interests.
Yeah.
When you push a partition as well, that's going to result in refugees.
Yeah.
So there is around about 700,000 Palestinian refugees that emerged because of the land conquering. And the status of the refugees and their descendants is a really big component of the conflict today. A few more conflicts too. There's, I think, 3 big ones. And the third one is known as the 6-Day War of 1967. I just want to throw that in there. It allowed Israel to gain even more land, including the Gaza Strip. So after that first conflict, Egypt had the Gaza Strip. But then after the 6-Day War, Israel takes the Gaza Strip, which is a problem because it was harboring a lot of Palestinian refugees.
Yeah.
And so that area of the Gaza Strip, since that 1967 war, has been dangerous to go to. And then they tried to resolve it through peace accords in Oslo in 1993 and 1995. Leaders from Palestine and Israel came together and negotiated for Israel's withdrawal from Gaza and other key areas, which did happen in 2005. So they pulled out, so the Gaza Strip is still like a lot of conflict, but Israel withdrew from it. And a Palestinian political group called the Hamas emerges, and they won elections and took control of Gaza in 2006. And so since then, the Hamas have occupied the Strip, and that has become a site for protests, bombings, land assaults, and other acts of violence. So Israel and the United States, as well as several other countries, consider the Hamas as a terrorist organization. And in May of 2017, leaders of the Hamas proposed the formation of a Palestinian state using the 1967 defined borders, with Jerusalem as its capital, but the group refused to recognize Israel as a state, and so the Israeli government naturally rejected the plan.
No.
We're not on the map.
Wait a second.
So as of 2018, most of the Palestinian inhabitants are the original 1948 war refugees and their descendants. Many of them are still living in refugee camps, and the border is still debated and unclear today, and there's still persistent conflict in the region today. And yeah, that's the end of my notes. I really didn't know how to wrap it up.
It's so complicated. I'm really glad that you went into detail about the history, because like it makes you understand each side's claims to the territory better, and like each side's perspective. Do you think it'll ever get resolved? Because like honestly, I just think with the amount of foreign interference, and like there are so many countries around the world that have a lot of interest in the conflict that are like defending one of the sides. So I wonder if there will ever be a solution, like a permanent, maybe a peaceful resolution, like, yeah. And then how do you define like peaceful resolution? Because maybe one side will be content and then the other side will be
Yeah, I don't know, it's tough.
This is like a technical question, but like if you're born the Gaza Strip, like, I don't know, like what is your passport? Do Palestinians have a passport? Like, is it recognized?
That's a great question.
I wonder if it's recognized internationally, and like just the logistics. Like if you're born there, your whole, that, I can't imagine how difficult that must be.
Yeah, they do. They have the Palestinian Authority passport is their passport that they've been using since 1995.
Oh, wow, that's recent. Wow. Okay, yeah, you did a good job, I think. Yeah, I think you did a really good job at like explaining the context in an unbiased way.
I tried my best. And if anything, I hope that you guys found the story of Moses interesting.
I learned so much about Moses. Man, maybe now I need to read the Bible. What other juicy stories?
It's an interesting book.
A real page turner.
Lots of lessons. This has been an episode of How Did We Not Know That?
If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
You can also follow us on all social media, including YouTube, at How Did We Not Know That?
If you thought our podcast was low quality, we know. We thought so too. Help us improve the podcast by contributing to our Patreon.
Thank you for listening, and see you guys next week.